Nau mai haere mai, talofa lava. To celebrate the University of Canterbury's 150th anniversary, the Department of History is welcoming back and honouring a diversity of our graduates from across the decades. Ko Katie Pickles tōku ingoa. And I'm going to ask our guests about their memories of their time here as a student, discuss their life since graduating, and how history has proved useful, and seek advice for those studying history today and into the future. Tonight's guest is Josiah Tualamali'i. Josiah has a background in authentic youth participation and assisting Pacific and other communities to share their voices in many different spaces. Most recently, he's become a commissioner as a member of the Children and Young Persons Commission. That's just quite recent since we developed the series. So that's the latest congratulations to the Josiah to be one of 6 commissioners. So he's done a lot of work as an activist improving youth health and wellbeing. In 2018, he served as the youth voice on the government inquiry into mental health and addiction. Alongside the Rata Foundation, he's the co-chair of Pacific Wellbeing lead Te Pou and on the board of Te Pou. Josiah has done work on a letter campaign and petition calling for supporting the Polynesian Panthers, which called for an apology for the Dawn raids, which was a successful campaign. He advocates in a lot of areas of Pacific youth leadership, has been doing so for a long time now, over a decade, and in particular at Pilot that we'll talk about a little bit later on, which advocates for Pacific people's voices to be heard, young people. And he's called for the police also not to routinely carry guns and has fought against racism in the media. Now, Josiah is coming back to us from the last decade. We're almost up to date with time or recent history. He started here as a student in 2014, and he graduated with his first degree, a BA in history and political science, a double major, in 2019. So, Josiah, welcome back to history. It's fantastic to have you back here with us.
Aloha, Katie. It's really special to be part of this series.
So, I have a memory of when I first taught you, and it was over in the Kirkwood village, which was the temporary buildings put up after the earthquakes. You were here in the wake of the earthquakes, and sort of that was normal for you, the new normal, buzzing around those temporary spaces. They were what you'd known. And I remember we were doing a Recovering Christchurch course, looking at it till just before the earthquakes, its history, 1850 to 2010. And we were doing suburbs, and we were writing up on the board all the suburbs people could think of. And when it came to one particular suburb, I think you might have contributed, I'm not sure. And I was like, oh, fantastic. And do you remember what that suburb was?
I do, and my parents still live there, Parklands.
It was Parklands. And of course, yours truly grew up on Parklands, went to Parkview Primary School. And so it's like, oh, fantastic. So that's one thing you and I have in common that probably not many other people would know. And another thing that we have in common is that we both went to university with one of our parents. So we were students at the same time as a parent. I, in my case, had my mother a year ahead of me, also doing a degree in history, and you had your father
2 years ahead of me. Yeah. So my dad decided to do his first degree in 2012, and I started in 2014. So he had just started, and I was at high school, and I was feeling, oh gosh, because dad had worked at the high school in sports, and so he was at school. And then he went to uni, and then I was going to go to uni. So I felt we were following each other around, and sometimes it got a little bit annoying, but it ended up being one of the best things. And being able to study together and hear what he thought about the world and read his assignments, just to talk, have different conversations. That's something that I loved about it. Yeah.
Yep, ditto. No, absolutely. And of course, for us, it's completely normal that students are of all ages.
Yeah.
And all from all places, of all ethnicity. Yeah, that whole diversity is just the way it was and is, which is perhaps a real strength here at the university, I think. And it always has been. And the idea of what we call mature students or adult students and so forth. So yeah, your memories of when you came here, you're over at Kirkwood Village. You pre-enrolled in law, I think. Was interested in
Yeah,
You,
that was my first. That was what I did first. The first year law and a couple of other courses, and that went really well. But in the second year, didn't go so well. And also, I kind of thought, not really me. And so I
yes,
changed, and that sort of went back to what I loved at high school, history. And I've always kind of been really interested in the past. My family have often told me the stories, and I get to remember them. But yeah, Jane Ellis, my history teacher at school, sort of helped me think about it, Christchurch Antarctic connections, and we got to do some great projects on that, and just about place-based stuff. And then at UC, I did a course, your course, and I was like, this is the home, New Zealand history. Yeah.
yes. Shout out to Jane Ellis at Middleton Grange. We've had a lot of students come through who've been inspired by her. Sort of sparked quite a few historical imaginations.
Yeah, and she also brought. I mean, obviously now history is compulsory, or New Zealand history stories are compulsory in the school system. But she was talking about New Zealand history to us in year 11 and 12 and 13, and that wasn't, that was 2011, 2013. So I know that wasn't new at that time. Others were doing it, but that was really influential for me, and
Yes.
just hearing about where we are and what's happened before, and not just getting caught up on the first 4 ships, or the
Yes.
idea of how Christchurch began, or how
Yes.
Akaroa has been, all those things.
Yes. Yep. Challenging some dominant narratives and making everyone feel at home, really. Yeah. And recovering in those stories. So your great grandmother, I think you've been sort of researching her life.
I have. So I grew up in Dunedin. That's where I was born, but my great grandmother was living here in Christchurch. Grew up in the Oxford area and then moved into town a little bit later. But she walked everywhere, and lots of people used to see her walking, probably from the late 70s into just before the quakes. And she was known as the walking lady, the teleporting lady, and all these names. And I didn't really know this was much of a thing until around just before the earthquakes. A poster someone made a piece of art about her and a number of other so-called Christchurch characters. And so, and funnily enough, actually, some of her letters, which she wrote to Geoffrey Palmer, are in the university archive and his papers. And so they kind of were in the archive. I didn't know they were there at Macmillan Brown Library. And then I ended up coming to UC a little bit later. There's lots of those links. And then also she supported soldiers' mental health. And then my mum, my nana, her daughter became a mental health psychiatric support worker. And then my mum became a mental health nurse. And then I've done, and my other wider family members have done mental health support and policy stuff. And so there's kind of like lots of threads of like Christchurch, mental health and wellbeing, the university, and a lot of it all before I ended up where I am, and not knowing that was there, and discovering it along the way kind of confirms maybe I've been in the right place.
Yes, so discovering all those entanglements that have been working, that way. And I know also when you were at high school, that's when you became involved in Pilot. That's right too.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a Pacific Youth Leadership Program just before the earthquakes, and I was 14. You were supposed to be 16 or older to be part of it, but they let me in. And that was pretty important for me to get a sense of who I am. I'm New Zealand born, I'm Samoan, I'm Scottish, I'm Irish, I'm Polish. I've got these different heritages, and growing up in first Dunedin and then Christchurch, how does all that fit together? And my friends helped me find that. And then we kind of decided after this leadership event, which was a parliamentary simulation, and that we could help our friends have a similar experience, and so help them participate in democracy, and done a little bit of that since.
Yes, I think that seems that's where the seeds were sown for a lot of the political and governance work that you've gone on to excel at, and we're going to talk about some of the major jobs you've had and the positions that you have been doing. So there was that going on, and you were discovering history. You came along to university here, and you join a few clubs?
I did. Probably the standout one was the Samoan Students Association. That club's been around since the 1960s on campus, and so it's been a very special place, and so many of our Pacific leaders me lopa Babsi to many people. He was sort of the guardian, so a lot of that time, and we're the privilege of having an elder who was sort of on campus with us all the time, and he was still there when I was there in 2015, and we hosted the National Samoan Students Gathering that year. It was quite fun and a little bit funny, where we had lots of Samoan students from the North Island coming down, and I know some of the parents were a bit worried about them leaving the safety of non-earthquake territory and coming to earthquake land, and but we got to show them the city, we got to share our culture, we got to celebrate, and for our wider Pacific community and Samoan community. And as so many people here in Christchurch through that time, there wasn't always many moments to celebrate, but that was a very memorable one.
Yes, no, that's good, because I think it is quite significant that you've been here in the wake of the earthquakes and seen the whole regeneration and the remaking of the university that I think you've been writing about too, for a volume that's coming out to commemorate the 150th as well. So yeah, that whole making of history and remaking.
Yeah, it was great you mentioned Kirkwood before, because something else that I was one of the early students who got to go back to the Arts Centre. We had Irish history, Roman Light. We had a course in there over summer, and that was our place once upon a time in the Arts Centre, and kind of being upstairs back in there was quite unique. Yes. Thinking about the who had walked through those walls and what had been achieved, and here we were back again. That was
that whole reclaiming of our campus downtown, or what was, and that whole regeneration of the relationship between town and gown, as it used to be called, the whole community. So at the moment you're working on a master's degree here, which is great, and but also you've been living your good life, as I think I'd call it, this whole sort of combination of facets of these lives that we all have, and you've done a whole range of work activities, life activities since you've graduated. And so I think when you were studying, you were always incredibly busy and being pulled in all sorts of different directions, and picking up jobs, appointments while you were studying. And so in 2017, you stopped university for a little bit. That's right, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. I'm glad you brought it up, because that's something I was hoping we would talk about, and hopefully it's helpful for others. But there've been a few ups and downs throughout the study period. There was a course that I was in with you, Katie, that the previous year that I was no longer part of, and I don't think I said much to you about it, but I just disappeared one day, and it was things have been going on, and I needed some time away. But 2017 I left uni, and I thought I was done. I didn't think I was going to finish my degree. There've been some family things that have gone on, and life at that point was just feeling a little bit bleak, and needed some time to just go away and have a break and work on my well-being. And had great support from my doctors and other people, and my dad. And it's interesting, actually, I think the other blessing of having dad at uni was that I had that extra support from my parent, and that's one of the reasons we're so close. I also ended up working with him, and I worked at OGV, the restaurant in town, the bar. And so that was another heritage place, which was quite special. But I worked there Friday and Saturday night for about 3 or 4 months, expecting that might be the next thing. I'm still doing some community stuff around our Pacific Wellbeing, and but I thought it was ended, and then I got a phone call in February the following, after doing that for a little while, that the government was considering me for a national mental health review. And and that I would know in 3 days' time whether the Prime Minister and the government were going to announce that. Was I comfortable with being appointed to something such as that if it happened? And I said, I would be. And I think I needed to experience that. It was very, very helpful for what I was about to hear that year. And then all the other skills and experiences at uni and in life, being able to weave into that work. But
Yes, and so that was the mental health inquiry that that you took on, and that absolutely important but challenging work, and yeah, you brought all of your experiences and also your training. Do you think history and political science sort of helped you in that sort of inquiry work?
A lot. So that piece of work, that type back then in 2017, the new government had come in, and there'd been this huge crawl that there's a crisis in mental health need, and then in the 100-day plan there was a promise to set up an independent review to look at what needs to happen, and so they had appointed these well-known names, very, very influential people to do this, to lead this review, including a former health and disability commissioner, including one of the most eminent scholars in health and wellbeing, Sir Mason Jury, and other leaders. And then they appoint a 20-year-old who's dropped out of university, but that's not really well known. But yes, absolutely, the history study and how we think about how to solve problems. The support that I got from the University Health Centre, and their experience as a student who at times was being helped to keep going at uni, and then just what it was like in the wider community, and then the insights from how we try and make something really complicated into something that decision makers can do something with. That was the political science elements that helped. Yes. And I needed all of that, and I didn't really know that, but it made sense when we were doing it.
The political science side for the policy, and then the history for the inquiry, well, both for the inquiry skills and history perhaps for the stories, that passion you have Absolutely. For people's stories and intergenerational stories.
I didn't realize that at the time, but that was it was a big research project in a sense. And we're going around, we had, there's 400 meetings, over 400 meetings, and we went and listened to different people and had to try and analyze what the issues were and then categorize them into a format that could be written into a report that and then considering how you take the stories and honor the stories in what you've written and actually show that you've heard what's been said, and actually reflecting that in the public meetings where you've heard that, and then also how you take what's felt and what's said, and then what system levers can you move to address those issues. Yes. And then when you're talking about hundreds of thousands of voices, whether it was through the petitions that we received, whether it's through the submissions, whether it was the personal stories, what weight you give the different voices, and then how you decide what the set of recommendations are, and history helped me with the judgment about those different needs and hopes. Also, just I guess the belief that we can make it better. I look at the stories of how we've been through some really difficult things as a globe and as New Zealand, and over time, people have got through. I was just reading about the influenza epidemic support today, and how some of the local communities came together and what they did, and those stories help fuel
history is helpful. And if we were thinking of those of our listeners who are at school now and considering sort of, they think, oh, that sounds like the sort of work I would like to do in the future, what do you think it is that you have? So you can see the skills you need, but as a person, what sort of what has to drive you into the type of work that you do? Do you think what's your calling for it? What do you sort of lead to it by the most?
Well, I think it's the desire to make things better for people, and a belief that it can be better. I think there's a lot of hopelessness, and I heard that through the inquiry work and through everything I do since. But we have to remain positive, and it's those community stories. We see it through COVID. We see it where people have found the solutions if they're given the support, and so it's that we can make it better. And I think for young people at school who might be thinking about climate crisis and these big challenges, we can't and we shouldn't give up. There's we can make change, and I've seen that through some of the opportunities my friends and I have been involved with, and some of the things we've called with where people have listened. We didn't expect them to. We weren't sure they would.
Yes.
But when we take the time, and history is the tool, when we take time for people to understand how things have been and where we're at now, and we build that empathy across the communities, there's a lot that can change.
Yes, and you've been involved, a lot of your work as an activist. You've been involved in a good old historical tool, activist tool of the petition.
Yes.
So you've taken to petitions a little bit.
I've done a couple, yeah.
Yes, so your petition that I mentioned in your intro about the apology, supporting the Panthers and the apology for the Dawn raids.
Yes. Yeah, so what happened was we heard that the Polynesian Panthers, Mātua, the elders, and mostly the ones in Auckland had put out a call for an apology. And this would have been in about February 2021. And then I decided with a couple of friends that Selwyn Gamble and Benji Timu and some others that we would start writing letters, so that, and handwrite letters, because you can free post to Parliament, and anyone listening, you can still free post to Parliament, and emails are free too. We can write to our decision makers, but we just decided that as people who have learned about it, and in Selwyn's case, someone, a family member, a descendant of family members who have been affected by that, and Benji too, that we thought that we should speak as a younger generation, supporting our elders who are making the call. And then a little while later, it looked like it might happen. And so we felt that it needed to be a cross-party thing. And we were really concerned that some parties might try and say, oh, you know, immigration, oh, overstaying, you know, we're just going to play the easy road on this. And so the petition, which was signed by just over 7,500 people, a huge privilege that those people wanted to support, that should be a cross-party thing. And another bit that's good with our history knowledge is knowing how we should record the stories. So when we heard that there was this moment where the government were likely to apologise, and we got a sense that the apology would happen at a separate event, separate from Parliament, that means it's not recorded in the parliamentary records, Hansard. So and someone might mention it in the Parliament, and then it might get recorded that way. But the actual detail of the apology and some of the speeches and stories around that weren't going to be recorded because it was in a different venue at a different time. So and putting the petition forward, they had a special debate, which then 10 members of Parliament all spoke, and it was quite neat where a number of them had gone and met with communities who are affected and then read their stories into Hansard by speaking them into the House. And so
Nice.
Yeah, there's other ways we can use our history insights to make sure stories aren't forgotten, like by knowing a technical thing about how Parliament works.
Yes, yeah, all those the practical knowledge that we learn here, as well as the ideas, and
That's right.
yeah, no, it's so true. So you've also been involved with the Rata Foundation as well.
Yep.
As a trustee, is it?
Yes,
yeah,
right.
and so tell us a little bit about what the Rata Foundation does.
Yeah, so the Rata Foundation started off a lot long before it was called that. It was the Canterbury Savings Bank. And I think you have a connection to the Canterbury Savings Bank.
I used to work in the cafeteria on the top floor and hand around nibbles to the recipients of those award grants.
Yeah. So it used to be the Canterbury Savings Bank, but there were these trust banks all around New Zealand, and then they were sold, and then the money was put into trusts for the communities that raised that money, that profit that had been grown from the community. And the Rata Foundation covers Christchurch, Nelson, Marlborough, and the Chatham Islands, Rekohu, Wharikoti, and we try and create an equitable and sustainable society in the Korowai of Te Tiu Waitangi. So we're trying to take the legacy of that support and help our communities today with what the needs are, and trying to look at things like equity, where not everyone in our community has the same challenges, And so really trying to tap into what the needs are for those most vulnerable and most struggling. And so then hopefully we all benefit, and we do. So that's the privilege, and been on there 4 years now.
4 years now, and been reappointed, is it?
Yes, that's right.
So going for another maximum term, and so that's such an applied. That's where you can really, in an applied way, make a difference, is it not?
Absolutely.
And,
and that's something I think that maybe is not. Well, I'm 28 at the moment, and that as for those of us who are watching who are a bit younger, governance and the opportunity to be on boards and taking our history thinking and our study experience into those. This one's not corporate, but into those settings where you help set the strategy, you help decide on where the funding should go. All of those things are. A student of any age can help with that. And if I remember correctly, you only have to be 16 to be a director on a board, or to be on board. You could get on your school board, but those are really important places where decisions are made. And if one children's commissioner, Andrew Beecroft, he said, your experience is your own. You're the expert in your own life, and I think that's why we need more voices on boards, and that's the privilege I have of being, on the Rata board and the other board work I do.
Yes, and it's a great one. I love the applied part of it, where you can see results, because a lot of the time, you take on causes and issues and advocate for social change, and like you were saying before, you're not always sure if you are going to be successful, and thinking and it depends on context. We know that as historians, so thinking you were advocating as well for police not routinely carrying guns, and instantly as a historian we go, why was this? So what were you up to there?
Well, I was at the university on the day of March 15 when it all got locked down, and I know many of us were there, and that was for the Muslim families and then the students afterwards. Gosh, that was such a difficult time. And as a country, the immediate response and the important response was for our police to be armed, because we didn't know how wide the threats were, if there were more threats. However, the police commissioner a little bit later decided that he was going to have a trial of that being a permanent thing, permanent's the wrong word, like a semi-permanent thing for around 6 months, and that was just unreal to a group of us, where we could understand the March 15 context, but it had been some time from that, and there was no community voice, and our police haven't been routinely armed for such a long time. It was such a big change. So in drawing on the history, what's the context been? Well, we haven't had routine arming of police, and the case hasn't been made, and the community haven't been given an opportunity to have their voice. And so we took a petition to Parliament. At that time, there was 10,000 signatures, and as of today, there's 30,000. So people still sign because they're still sometimes concerned when something comes up. But there are some ways that we've existed that we need to protect. And I heard someone say to me, one of the public servants I work with, say that they visited some countries overseas after other, really difficult terrorism events, and the thing that is always easier to buy more guns or to strengthen the body armor, buy faster vehicles, but the thing that we aren't necessarily always comparing it with is like how we exist as a society and how much we fund and put into communities having connection and supporting each other, and that is like that idea of social cohesion. And so sometimes it is a bit of a trade-off, but it can't always be that it's just the easy solution. We have to have the underlying things, and so we were very grateful that the government agreed with us that the police shouldn't be routinely armed without a public voice on it, and then it ended.
Yes, and that's a case of you and your colleagues. It could be being the critic and conscience and raising these issues that way, based on your understanding of histories and politics and all of your learnings, really, I think, isn't it? And likewise with your anti-racist work, when you've called out cartoons that are no longer appropriate, comments that are made in the media that you've taken up again, that's very much a critic and conscience advocacy activism side, I think, to what you've been doing too, isn't it?
That's one good thing about being at a university is there's lots of people like you, Katie, and other lecturers, Bronwyn Hayward, who have supported me, who that's what you do. You know, you notice the issues and you help the wider society understand how we should address them. And being amongst that's really helpful to feel comfortable doing that.
Yes.
And we do need more people to do it. And sometimes it does come at a bit of personal risk. You know, like there's a couple of the times I've spoken out on things. I know some people probably don't like me anymore, but that's their loss. And it's driven when you know in your heart of hearts that something's wrong. And that one of the cases you're referring to, there was Māori communities were being called out for being child abusers, and by a radio host, and it was untrue, it was unfair, it was trying to win an argument, and it was actually ended up denigrating Māori communities. And so yes, there's a little bit of risk speaking up about something like that, but I think we have to, because as we've seen and as we see, a lot of people feel very uncomfortable about cultural differences and about have sometimes limited understandings of the Treaty of Waitangi and how we can exist with lots of difference in our communities. The only way I see that we do it is by, one, taking the time to have good conversations and help people understand, but two, not shying away from holding people in decision-making roles or influence accountable when they are sowing disharmony and denigrating people. There's enough pain around. Let's clean it up and make some more hope.
Yes, yeah, no, so true. And I think that universities, we often get shocked because we're always looking balanced in different arguments and looking for context, like we're saying. And then sometimes in the media, it's just so blunt and untrue and fabrications, and especially in this age of disinformation. So I think we're finding that our students and graduates are just really invaluable, more than ever.
Absolutely. Discernment, I think, is one of the most important skills. And that's, I notice with some people I come across who haven't had the same opportunity to hone history skills. I think there's got to be like a rapid, 8-week course anyone could do to kind of learn history discernment, because we need more of it when it's harder to discern the truth from pseudo-truth.
Yeah, which goes back to, like you're saying, you were mentioning Hansard, and so there are all these sources in the way society works that because you've been taught those skills to use them in the knowledge of what they are, how to do research. But all those very practical skills are so useful in this day and age. Yeah, knowledge and truth versus disinformation, and So if thinking of those who are studying history today, and what have you got some advice for them that you might like to share?
Yep. One thing, since I went away from uni in 2017, and then I had that year working, and then I came back in 2018, and then did part-time courses through till I got my first degree. That really helped me see that we should be putting on the table as students that part-time study, if it's for you, it's for you. And even though it might still not be as normal at undergrad level for maybe younger students, for adult, so-called adult students, which I'd consider myself one now, that's a lot more common, parents and grandparents and other whānau members with different responsibilities. But I can see that having worked part-time and studied part-time, the benefit of how to take what we're learning and bring it through to what we're doing in the workforce, and likewise.
Yes,
But
that's a
that
good
practical
one.
experience
Yeah,
is so
yeah,
useful,
yeah.
and also challenged what I was learning in the theories, because there's a there's not always there's always a tension between, you know, what you can be shown and what you can read. I think, and it's not that either are wrong always, but there's sometimes it's useful to grapple with that, and how you, and we're not all visual and audio learners, so that practical that can sometimes make it a bit easier to get through, I think.
Yes, yes. Make often and appreciate when you are here and learning, isn't it? Or sort of
Absolutely.
often a very privileged place to be.
Yeah.
And too much juggling, it's too much juggling, isn't it?
That's right. It is too much, and you don't want to do that. Yeah. So it's getting that balance right. And I haven't come back to UC full time since, because of work and other things. And for even, you know, those who might be thinking about coming back and doing, you know, part time postgraduate course or something, or a study,
yes.
we should,
Yeah.
because we do
Yes.
need to keep sharpening our insights, and
Yes.
you know, tapping into the knowledge that's here, and then also helping shape that knowledge, and then helping shape the workplaces and the communities we're part of. And so I think that I may always, you know, be connected to UC and unis, regardless of what I'm doing in the workplace, because I guess also it's a little bit of the activist side. I need a bit of a critic and conscious home, and it, you know, I don't always sit comfortably at UC or unis, but that's the, you know, we don't all sit comfortably everywhere, but this is a little place of, you know, spirit to keep pushing.
Yes, yeah, and I think we're all sort of like that. We have using the term, sort of a good life that we're all hoping to lead, and it takes us to different places, and everybody's different. And it's a very sort of old-fashioned idea that was never really a reality, to think one shape fits all. As I think of when we were at the town site, and a lot of students back then were working, and the lectures were held on an evening. So it was, only when the government brought in bursaries and it became free that people were able to study full time. And you sort of see that as that's changed, people think they can do everything, isn't it, and be everything, and that can often be a bit much pressure. So I think it's a really good message for people to go easy on themselves, and to think what works for them.
Yeah, and there's some life we want to experience that we don't have to let go of, and I feel that's the biggest privilege. I can get to my brother's events and just be involved in the community stuff. And if I had known that leaving high school, I would have done that. If it felt like I could still be part of the community. But then we have to experience a little bit of burnout sometimes to learn about the balance and those things. So it's been helpful to learn those professional skills around how we turn up to work and all that.
Yes, no, absolutely. But it's not about trying to be everything to everyone and think there's a correct path. There's all lots of sort of inspirational story and so forth. And like life has its ups and its downs, and it's difficult. Yeah, I think that's great advice for people to sort of keep it real, as we're saying, and then think what is your good life that you want. And Josiah, it's been really a privilege to bring you home. One of our more recent graduates, and you did have the word sort of youth attached to a lot of what you did for a long time, but now in the work you're doing, it's still there sometimes, but you've also been doing all sorts of health work for it's all ages, and I can see really a lot of your early experiences that you've shared with us, how they've shaped you, and how you've sort of moved into different positions that really suit you and that you've got such a talent for. And it's been really interesting too to hear about how your studies feed into the type of work that you do, and whether it's your activism, and that sort of campaigning work, whether it's your trust work, whether it's your commission work, whether it's government inquiries. You're active across the whole range, and we see it coming together. And also in your interest in history, on family history, family stories, and how the personal is political, and how who we are. I think that catchphrase really it's really important for everything you do. So it's been great to honour you and bring you home to history tonight, and thank you so much for sharing all of your insights, and we're so proud of you and all the work that you do and continue to do, especially because you're from Parklands.
Pals always.
Not that we're biased. Yeah.
No, I know.
Yeah. So yeah, go Parklands, and yeah, we will be in touch, part of the community, and thank you so much. Go well, and yeah, keep on with what you do. It's really is making a difference.
Thank you so much, Katie, for this opportunity to be involved. And maybe just one last thing, thank you for what you did to help me stay at uni. And maybe that's just something else to round off, this part of the series, is that there's, like for students who are coming along and not quite sure, can you tell your lecturers what's going on in life, and will it work out all right if you do? Well, my experience is that it's good, and then they're here to help. And Katie, you did that for me. Bronwyn Hayward did that for me, and yeah. So
oh, pleasure. It's a pleasure, but we're absolutely here to help, and yeah, I know the name of every one of my students and who they are, and yeah, the door's shut at the moment. I was going to say the door is always open.
Well, it's after hours and it's the holidays.
It's after hours too. Yeah. So no, thank you very much, and have a good evening. Hakite, yeah, we'll see you soon.
We'll do.
Bye.
Bye.